Welcome to our presentation today on how to prepare for the RAC exam. There are a number of ways to prepare for this examination. We're going to begin with a review of the exams, the content of each exam, and the types of questions you will be asked to answer. Knowing as much as you can about the exam will help you prepare. Then we're going to look at how to develop a study plan and to organize your review and preparation. We'll direct you to some resources that you may find helpful. Then we're going to talk about exam day, what to expect, and the approaches you may use to overcome anxiety, as well as to answer questions. Lastly, we'll talk about what to expect after the exam, how the exams are scored, and when and how you will be informed of your results. This first portion of the presentation provides you with an overview of the exam. No matter which RAC exam you are taking, keep in mind that it's going to cover regulated healthcare products, including biopharmaceuticals, medical devices, and in vitro diagnostics. There's an equal balance of device and pharmaceutical questions. In addition, questions on the exam relate to general regulatory critical thinking and decision making and may not always be specific to a product type. The RAC exams are updated each year by committees of regulatory professionals who hold the RAC credential. The exams cover regulations that were in effect as of December 31st of the previous year. The RAC exams are computer-based and offered in English at testing sites worldwide. Each exam includes 100 multiple-choice questions. Each has its own test content outline, and each is 2 hours long. There are 3 types of questions: recall level questions, application level questions, and analysis level questions. We're going to give you examples of each of these 3 types of questions, along with general guidance on how you may go about formulating your response. The RAC exams for the U.S. and Canada, as well as the global exam, have 4 main content areas, what we call domains. The exam for the EU has 3 content domains. The domains for each RAC exam are shown on this slide, along with the approximate number of questions in each area. Each domain contains associated task statements, which outline the typical responsibilities of a regulatory professional. A detailed content outline of the areas covered within each domain for each exam is available in the RAC Candidate Guide. This next slide shows an example of a recall level question. This question is taken from the EU examination and is relatively straightforward. It's asking you to recall the regulation stating how long technical documentation must be retained on a medical device. If you cannot recall the specific regulatory requirement, what can you do to determine the correct answer? First, try to eliminate any responses you know to be incorrect. For example, as a regulatory professional, your knowledge and experience tell you that technical documentation most likely needs to be retained for a period of time after manufacturing is discontinued, simply because that product is going to remain in use. Thus, you can eliminate response A. Responses C and D address the product's lifetime. Think about whether product lifetime is typically included in the documentation requirements. If this is not likely, then you can eliminate these responses. That would leave B as the correct response. B is the correct response. Read it and be sure it makes sense for what is being asked. The reference for this response is the European Medical Devices Directives, specifically Annex 2, Section 6.1, Annex 3, Section 7.3, and Annex 7, Section 2. This next slide shows an example of an application level question on the U.S. exam. To answer this question, you need to have an understanding of U.S. regulations, and how to apply them to the situation posed in the question. When reading the question, read the stem, that is the question, first to be sure you understand what the question is asking. This question asks what you need to do to market your Class II medical device that has the same properties as one already marketed by a competitor. If you know the medical device regulations, you can apply that knowledge to this situation and will know this is a new intended use for this product. Thus, you'll need to submit a 510K and obtain clearance. So the correct response is A. If you cannot recall a specific regulation, try to eliminate any options that are obviously incorrect. For example, option D is incorrect since the change in your product involves more than a labeling change. There's been an actual change to the product. Responses B and C are not correct because periodic and annual reports don't apply to Class II devices. You have a better chance of selecting the correct option if you can narrow down your choices. This next slide shows an example of an analysis level question. Analysis level questions pose several situations, and you will need to evaluate the information you have been given and determine what is relevant to help you arrive at the right answer. This question is asking the first step in the process, and you'll note that the word first is capitalized. You have an approved product that is a medical device in one country, Y. Your company also has an enhanced version of that device that includes a biologic coating and is approved in the second country, Z, where it is classified as a medical device. You've been asked to develop a plan to have the coated product approved in country Y. You may consider that there are differences in how combination products, in this case a product that includes a device and a biologic, are classified in different countries. Country Z classified the device-drug combination as a device, but not all countries will view the product in the same way. So let's look at possible responses. Response A indicates that you will prepare and submit dual submissions, both as a device and a pharmaceutical or medicinal product. This will require extensive work, duplication of effort, and expense. Is this the best way to begin your regulatory plan? No, it's not. Response B suggests that you go ahead and submit the product to country Y as a device, relying on the fact that it is classified as a device in country Z. Your regulatory experience should tell you that this is not a viable first step. Product classifications are not the same in all countries or regions. Response C indicates that you should submit the drug component of the product for review as a separate pharmaceutical. This response has several limitations. First, you don't have information on whether the drug used for the coating is already approved in country Y. Therefore, submitting it as a standalone drug may not be warranted. Secondly, review of the product will require an assessment of the combined characteristics of its components. So that leaves response D. Response D is the correct response and the most logical first step. That is, for any submission, the regulatory professional should first consider the product's characteristics and use and examine the regulations, guidelines, and prior history for similar products in the target country. These elements are important first steps for any product. While this more detailed question addressed a combination product and a complex situation, you will note that the correct answer reflects critical and logical decision making. Even if you are not familiar with the specific regulations for this product type, you can use your experience and knowledge to select the logical and correct answer.